The NBA draft is one of the weirdest events in the sports calendar. Every year we get the same headlines about who is going to be the next big thing in this league, but no matter how great they were before they hit the league, there is no guarantee anyone is going to hit the way we expect them to. And what we call that historically when they don't is a draft bust. But being a draft bust isn't just black and white. An NBA draft bust comes in many shapes and sizes and in many levels. And in today's video, I want to go over every level of NBA draft bust from most common to least common and make sense of every archetype, give some examples, and even better, try to defend each type from the sides of the GMs who take that risk every single time. With that being said, if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to like the video as we are now officially on the road to 100,000 subscribers. So be sure to subscribe to be a part of that, and of course, to catch more videos. And if we hit 1,000 likes, I'll do the same version, but for draft steals instead. But as usual, this will be a long one, but you already know who it is. Roll it!
3, 2, 1.
Weights in the weight room, so he stitched up in the left.
If there's one thing that I know, it is that high trading fees is one of the biggest turnoffs of anyone curious about trading for themselves. Well, today I want to introduce you to the sponsor of today's video, Webull, the next generation platform for modern day investors boasting commission-free trading with no hidden platform fees and transparent pricing. And the perks don't end there. You can also take advantage of their top tier cash management with a 3.35% APY, access to 70 trusted cryptocurrencies, and the ability to trade in real time, overnight, or over the counter. And now with their prediction market being live on the platform, you can be a part of the big game with Seattle, New England to make even more use of Webull and all they have to offer as they meet for a legendary rematch in the championship game. And with both of these great features combining both crypto trading and prediction, Webull is the place to be for the future of trading. Sign up with Webull today using my link and take advantage of all of your cryptocurrency needs and be a part of the big game. Thank you again for Webull for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into it. We start at level 1, the most common type of NBA draft bust that comes around way too often. Some who come into the NBA this way and some that develop into this type, and that is the injury risk. When you draft a player with a very high pick, they are expected to be a mainstay on your team. But if they are struggling to even stay on the court, it creates big problems that make that pick either deemed as not worth it or makes you wonder what could have been if you chose a player with less issues right out the gate. But some people are worth that risk, and 99.9% of the time, you are going to take it and love it. Like the biggest example of this level, Zion Williamson. I already talked about Zion's career fully on this channel so far, but we all know the story. One of the most physically dominant prospects we have ever seen in NBA history, with a very low chance of failing in the NBA. And even with his potential weight issues and his viral shoe explosion at Duke, no one thought for 1 second that this would carry over to his NBA career, to the point that he was drafted #1 overall of the 2019 NBA draft. However, as we know, he's currently in year number 7, has only played 245 games out of 518, which is only 47% of his possible career games. And in many of those years, the Pelicans was just one Zion Williamson decent health season away from possibly being a contender in the Western Conference. And due to that, he's a bust in this league to many people. But I will say, his body transformation he's gone through this offseason has seemed to help things out for his longevity. However, taking 7 years to do so is pretty concerning and still puts him in this category. Unless he somehow has a redemption arc. But again, this takes in many forms in many ways. But some people can come in with near perfect health, but due to one incident, things take a turn and puts them in this category. Like the second overall pick of the 2014 NBA draft, Jabari Parker. Now I know to the NBA historians out there, the comeback will be that Jabari Parker fractured his foot in high school, but an injury like that isn't career threatening. And he go on his freshman year at Duke like nothing happened, and he'd be drafted second overall to the Milwaukee Bucks to be their next franchise leader for the future. But that is when the injury bug started and hit him hard, with 2 ACL tears in the same knee his rookie year and his third season, which absolutely zapped him of everything that made him so special as a player. And from there, Jabari Parker's name fell out of relevancy year by year to the point that he'd be out of the league by the time he was 26. One of the more sad cases of this happening. Now, when it comes to defending this type of a draft pick from the aspect of a Zion Williamson type, the obvious answer is that the fact that we are in 2026 and we have so much access to top tier medicine and training that some teams think they can get around it with enough time. And it kind of sucks when you think about the modern day culture of basketball and AAU. Some of these guys come in with way too many miles, even as young guys, so the problem starts early and it just adds up over time. Add into stuff like injury management and rest games. Yes, unfortunately, that is a thing. There are many ways franchises try to not have this sort of archetype affect their team. But whether it's something they have to manage forever like a Zion, or something as unfortunate like a Jabari Parker, it's the most common and also the worst to deal with. But at least there are success stories in this realm too, like the 2023 MVP Joel Embiid, who literally sat out for his first 2 seasons of his career and has only played 65 or more games twice in his career. But considering the heights he has reached as a player, he is for sure as good as it gets when it comes to being a part of this archetype. And of course, as we know, this season, he's out there actually having a little bit of a revival as his health gets better. But things get even more interesting than just a player who is not able to stay healthy. How about when a team takes a risk on someone that isn't thought to go as high as people expected? Sometimes in the case of a draft, you have teams that believe in a player way more than most people do, and despite having a higher draft position, are willing to go back into mock drafts to grab that person. The next level of this draft bust is the draft reach. Now, while reaching back for a player in the draft isn't a bad thing per se, the smart thing to do is to fall back in the draft via trade and pick them up so at least you hit 2 birds with 1 stone. Get more draft capital and get the player you want. Win-win. But sometimes in NBA history, you get examples of teams believing in a prospect so much that they'll use that early pick to get them instead. And who better for this than one of the most infamous number 1 picks of all time?
The Cleveland Cavaliers select Anthony Bennett of Toronto, Canada.
Yep, you knew who was coming here. The man who was most known for his draft selection reaction than his actual career, Anthony Bennett. Now, we all know the 2013 class was one of the worst of all time, even if it is saved by Giannis and Rudy Gobert. But going into the draft, and most draft boards had guys like Nerlens Noel and Alex Len going number 1, which is funny considering they're both out of the league right now. But due to Anthony Bennett's great season at UNLV, he was rising up draft board to the point that he got to be the surprise of the draft, being taken at number 1. Of course, we all know what ended up happening here, with Bennett only lasting 151 games in the NBA in 4 seasons, but it doesn't end there. How about a draft class filled with all-time greats with Stephen Curry, Blake Griffin, James Harden, and DeMar DeRozan, where we get the number 2 pick of the 2009 draft, Hasheem the Beat. At number 1, you had one of the more premier players you've ever seen in Blake Griffin, who was ready to destroy the NBA. Then at number 2, Hasheem the Beat, one of the rawest players in the class, who was led by his 7'3" height and long wingspan, who sure gave you 4 blocks a night in college, but many people knew his game was not going to translate to the NBA. And despite them already having OJ Mayo and Mike Conley already, they took him when they already had Marc Gasol, who they could have just developed someone else behind the 2 guards. I mean, James Harden was made to be the 6th man originally in OKC. The Grizzlies could have easily done the same. People knew the Beat was going to be an immediate bust, and he only lasted 4 seasons and was primarily a backup. And for another viral example of someone who is extremely overhyped for many reasons, how about we talk about the 10th pick of the 2016 NBA draft, Thon Maker. Now, I remember being 16 or 17 watching NBA YouTube during its very beginning, and I can think way back to that very viral Mike Krzyzemba video of documenting the many people who believed Thon Maker was going to be the next big thing. And the hype for him was huge for his time in high school as a near 7-footer who can dribble, shoot, and defend in the paint, you know, the usual unicorn stuff. But one thing he had going against him was the fact that he skipped the college level that would have put him in a more accurate microscope to determine a more accurate level of his abilities. And another was the fact that he was going to have to do all these things as a player, but unfortunately, none of those skills were going to be anywhere near strong or NBA level. So Thon was still raw and needed some development, which isn't bad, nowhere near. Also, when you have the H thing going against them, but let's not get into that because I have no idea if it's even confirmed or not. So, but it just means, like many others that went that route, you are likely going to have to be taken at a later place in the draft. Anthony Simons and Mitchell Robinson are people who did similar things, skipped a year in college, and were mainly training for an extra year, and both are leading good careers off of that. However, Thon was taken at number 10. He was in the lottery in 2016, and as the biggest reach of that type of journey, and his weaknesses were exposed off the jump. Whether it was his skills not translating in the NBA as a lot of people expected, him not playing the position he wanted due to his skills not translating, or the fact that he bet on himself so hard and requested to get out of Milwaukee for potentially greener pastures. However, he didn't get that. Thon Maker didn't survive in the NBA at all and will be known as one of the biggest reaches in NBA history. And even right now, we are seeing yet another huge reach in the latest NBA draft class with Young Hansen from the Portland Trail Blazers, who is as raw as they come and comes from the school of the Jokic type centers. But the Blazers believe he can be the real deal with time and will be taking their time with him. It's just funny that they drafted him when they already have Donovan Clingan as their main center, who is actually doing really good for himself, and got rid of DeAndre Ayton to allow that. But some teams do the weirdest things at times, and this is what that video is all about. But in some cases, most franchises can avoid reaching for a prospect by, again, just trading back or trading for the pick and giving a team behind you the prospect that they want in the swap. But we just talked about one level being too hasty with a pick and picking too soon. Well, how about when you buy the hype of something not even from this country? Level 3 of the draft bust ladder puts us in a place that is still very much common, but teams are starting to get better at drafting these types. But back in the day, teams used to get these types so wrong, so consistently, to where negative stereotypes would be placed over them from day one. And that is the European hype archetype. Despite how great and how many European products are in the league today, everyone knows and acknowledges that they play basketball much differently than us in the States, and with that, sometimes it takes time for them to either adjust or strive. However, there are many on top of many success stories from early drafted Europeans: Luka, Dirk, Paul Gasol, Wemby, and even Chris Stapps, despite the injuries. But at the same time, you can name many more that dropped outside of the top 10 and into the 20s that also became great. But what I want to focus on here is the many on top of many European players that were picked high and didn't work out in the league at all for whatever reason. And the most infamous of these is someone who was headlined in one of the most famous NBA drafts of all time and picked before Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade. The second pick of the 2003 NBA draft class, Darko Milicic. This selection was based on many factors. First, the rise of Dirk Nowitzki in the NBA. Second, an exceptional workout with the Pistons. Third, he was a positional need for the Pistons. And lastly, Coach Larry Brown, known for being a very stern coach, and Darko's personality fit what Coach Brown wanted. So mix in a lot of these factors a little bit, potential and the vibes that he had with the coach, it was an automatic slam dunk of a pick. Even before the fact, Darko was a very dominant and athletic power forward who had a lot of upside and even had some of that Dirk-like game in his jump shot. It was just up to the Pistons to unlock it. The thing is, while LeBron, D-Wade, Bosh, and Carmelo all got off to hot starts in their career, Darko averaged less than 2 points per game in his first 2 years of his career and was out of the league at 27. Now, for those who don't know the story, a lot of his issues came from his immaturity at the time, a troubling relationship with Larry Brown and the Pistons, and even Darko saying later in life that he truly just didn't have a love for basketball, which you absolutely need to survive in the NBA. So he truly just stagnated as soon as he came in and turned into one of the biggest busts of all time. But there are many other examples of Europeans failing in the NBA with a high draft pick for much less complex reasons, like the #1 overall pick of the 2006 NBA draft, Andrea Bargnani. Just like Dirk, he was thought to revolutionize things with his stretch big potential and offensive skill set, but despite the decent offensive production, he simply was a negative in everything that wasn't on the offensive side of the floor, and despite his 7-foot height, he was a super negative in the paint defensively and a very, very weak rebounder. But there are also some that do nothing at all despite looking like they transcend the European label, like one of the most athletic Europeans who ever came through the draft, the 2015 5th overall pick, Mario Hezonja. Just like many European prospects, these guys have been playing professionally since they were very young, and in the case of Hezonja, he was playing for Barcelona ever since he was 17 years old and had 3 years of experience with the pro team, but on very limited playing time, so that means limited tape to examine and makes it harder and harder to be totally sure on things when you're making that selection. But the main selling point to Mario was his athleticism, his shot creation skills, and of course, his vitals. So the main thing would be about getting him up to speed to the NBA game, and considering he was out of the league in 5 years, that should tell you all you need to know about his time in the big leagues. He just wasn't what people expected of him to be and was immediately thrown out of Orlando once things got better for them. And he was even sent to other teams and flirting with the idea of making him a stretch 4, which absolutely was not in the plans when he first came into the league, which just shows that he absolutely had no place in the NBA. No teams truly valued him enough to keep him around in the league, so yet again, a bust. But you know what? Many players can say that they dunked on Giannis and blocked LeBron for a game winner in their career, because I would definitely be having that picture hanged in my man cave for the rest of my life, and we telling my future children for the rest of their lives every single day. And lastly, let's talk about someone who came from the very next draft and had the same issues. The 4th overall pick of the 2016 class, Dragan Bender. He was unfortunately a victim of the current game, loving stretch bigs, and of course seeing the success of Kristaps Porzingis in the league, he was riding off of his coattails coming into the draft. But just like Mario, he had very little tape to watch during his time in the EuroLeague, mainly being a bench player, and he was as raw as they came as a prospect, as an incoming 19-year-old. And as the 4th pick of a class, there are big expectations of you, and he didn't meet it at all, being a negative in almost every facet of the game, including what he was supposed to be at his best, a 3-point sniper, shooting 32% from his 3-ball his entire career and only being in the NBA for 4 seasons. Again, this type of hype is still very common in the NBA draft, despite teams getting better at avoiding those, but we are officially about to get into the real obscure ones in the draft, and the next level will for sure be something that you don't see too often. For a long time, the only way you could get drafted was from college or if you're from overseas. And most players are not going to be one and done and are not even going to be able to escape college for the NBA until they work themselves up into an amazing product in the college ranks. And for this level, we have the type of player that you don't see too often as a top 10 player, that level being the college riser. The type of players you are used to seeing in the draft all over the place are 18 to 19-year-olds after 1 year of college trying to make it to the league. The older you are, the farther back you're going to be most times due to this window of development, apparently. Obviously, that wasn't a thing far back in the NBA, but nowadays, the younger the better. No Diddy, of course. So in the realm of the draft, you don't see many guys who are juniors and seniors getting drafted over younger talent unless they took a meteoric rise in their skill set or a team believes he can be a star from the jump. Think of people like Damian Lillard, Victor Oladipo, Kemba Walker, and of course, Stephen Curry. But what about those who took a rise and fell right back down in the NBA? Well, let's start with one of the more viral cases and of course instantly known examples, the 3rd pick of the 2006 NBA class, Adam Morrison. In his junior year at Gonzaga, he was truly one of the best single season performers of all time. 28 points per game, 49% from the field, and 42% from 3. You truly couldn't imagine that Adam Morrison wasn't going to be anything worse than an all-star, considering that he had it all figured out taking a leap from his sophomore to junior year. Now, I know Adam's case is very specific to him, but he had a lot of stuff going against him in the NBA as soon as he came in. Whether the fact he had a hard time keeping up with the NBA NBA schedule, being a diabetic, the fact that he couldn't fit in the NBA style-wise and was a negative defensively, or even the fact that his shot simply didn't translate in the NBA, shooting 33% from three his rookie season, or the final kill shot, a torn ACL in the 2007 preseason, which would have been his second year in the league. It's unfortunate that happened to him, but with how things were looking, he may have still not been much in the NBA with how much was stacked against him. But he does have 2 NBA championships to his list of accolades, so that's something that can definitely not be taken away from him. But even if he was someone that prematurely burned out, how about some guys who received chances to improve themselves and simply didn't? Like the 4th pick of the 2010 NBA draft, Wesley Johnson. In his freshman and sophomore year at Iowa State, Johnson was the epitome of raw and inconsistent, but also had a frame and game that screamed potential. And when he transferred to Syracuse and sat out a year, his junior season was elite. 16 points, 8 boards, a steal and a block a night while shooting over 40% from three is everything that you would want from a prototypical wing in the league. And he used that amazing season to go to the NBA draft and was selected to the Timberwolves 4th overall in the 2010 NBA draft class. The problem was that amazing season was only going to remain as that. Despite being given 5 straight seasons as a primary starter on 3 different teams, Wesley Johnson never turned into anything much more than a role player, and even might have been too big of a compliment as he was one of the worst scorers in the league. So like in college, maybe he needed some time to figure it out, but that wasn't the case at all. He just wasn't an NBA quality talent, and a lone great season at Syracuse led him to the promised land. And for another example, how about one of the most famous college players of all time in the 2010s, BYU's own Jimmer Fredette. We had Stephen Curry in 2008. Well, in 2011, we had Jimmer Fredette. Deep 3-pointers, scoring masterclasses all season, and was even the AP Player of the Year in his senior year. But just like Adam Morrison, who hit the peak of college basketball, he was looking to take it to the next level. And with Stephen Curry having a hot start and bringing his scoring prowess to the NBA after getting many scouts talking about his lack of size and athleticism, Jimmer was also looking to take advantage of coming after him and potentially doing the same. He would be drafted behind Kyrie Irving, Brandon Knight, and Kemba Walker, but with the 10th pick, the Kings traded from him from Milwaukee, and he was looking to bring Jimmermania to the big leagues. The only problem was that he wasn't given the same keys as Curry and was very much buried from the very beginning behind IT. Yes, Isaiah Thomas was in Sacramento at one point, Tyreke Evans, and Marcus Thornton. But even worse, just like Adam Morrison, his game just didn't translate to the NBA at all, as he wanted to be the main guy and didn't have a single role player bone in his body. And that caused his career to end very quickly in the NBA. He was a man who wanted to lead the team, and he couldn't do that in the NBA, and it would have been cool to see, but it isn't what we got. But for these final few levels, we are going to get into some groups of players that franchises hate whiffing on, and in some situations, it's not even a fault of their own. Over the many years the NBA has been going on, the meta of how the leagues worked and its players have developed more and more. But sometimes that switch to the NCAA to the NBA doesn't work out strictly because they don't fit in. And yet franchises still take a chance anyways and tries to make the most out of these players. This level will be a combination of 2 types of players, both because they are very rare to see and they also struggle from the same problem. On one side, you have the players who struggle to find a role in the league due to them not having a true position, and on the other side, players who simply got drafted at the wrong time. And anyone who is anyone knows where exactly I'm going to talk about. Drafted with the 3rd overall pick of the 2015 NBA draft, we have Jahlil Okafor of the Philadelphia 76ers. And despite him being one of the best paint beasts the NCAA has ever seen from a freshman, his transition to the NBA was anything but seamless, because the time he was coming in was right at the same period which Stephen Curry's takeover of the league was happening, and it caused an entire meta shift to happen in the league. And if you were a big man that didn't have a jump shot, or at least at the bare minimum shut down the paint defensively and be a little versatile, you are now a negative asset, or at the best case scenario, a backup big. And while Jahlil Okafor averaged an amazing 17 points per game and shot over 50% in his rookie season, he would soon be overshadowed by the rookie season of Joel Embiid, who showed a lot more than him skill set wise, and it caused a quick exit for Okafor, which a lot of people hated to see from him. With a body and a game of an old school back to the basket big, the game became faster, more spaced out, and he just couldn't keep up unless the offense was based solely around him. As we know, the best bigs of today can truly do it all. Okafor was not a part of that mold and only lasted 5 seasons in the NBA to no real fault of his own. But what about someone who had no place from the very beginning? There is a term in the NBA space called a tweener, and that is someone who isn't necessarily defined by one position but can also play both. And usually they are someone who isn't fast or skilled enough to play the small forward position, but also isn't big enough to play the power forward position. Let's meet the second overall pick of the 2011 NBA draft class, Derrick Williams. Now, if there's one thing about being a tweener when they go to college, if they can find their game, they are going to dominate, because their weaknesses, funny enough, becomes a strength at that level. He was too powerful to deal with people on the wing, and he was too fast for paint players to keep up with. And if you add in some elite athleticism to his game, you now have a player who is one of the most efficient scorers in the paint in college basketball for a 2-year stretch. But despite of the clear issues that his game would have at the next level, the Minnesota Timberwolves still took him anyway, second overall, to see if they can make the most out of it. And if he's a part of this video, you know that means he didn't work out. He was very quickly given up on by the Minnesota Timberwolves, not even lasting 2 full seasons with them, and became a journeyman from there, never truly finding his footing. Because when you can't shoot the ball well, have issues scoring in the paint, and aren't super versatile defensively, it'll hurt your chances more and more. But funny enough, someone who could say that they are a more complete modern day version of him is Derrick Jones Jr. Super athletic and bouncy, plays the 4 due to him not having a fluid game a small forward would have, but also possesses great two-way skills and a knockdown 3-ball after many years of development. Tweeners in today's game have a lot more of an accepted role in this league, especially if they are more versatile, but of course, back in 2011, not so much. And how about for one more, we talk about someone that unfortunately fits both of those criteria, like the second overall pick of the 2018 NBA draft, Marvin Bagley III. In the early 2000s, Marvin would have been an easy choice for a top 3 pick. He raised himself to be an uber offensive power forward with slight ball handling skills to get his own shot, and even teased the ability to make 3-pointers further into his career. And like a Jahlil Okafor, was dominating college basketball, overpowering people and being more skillful than other bigs. The only problem was it was 2018 and the NBA meta-ship was happening, and due to that, he was called a tweener. But despite that, the Sacramento Kings still took him second overall over Luka Doncic, and the problems were immediate. Him at the power forward position wasn't going to work when it's basically just a second position for small forwards to be placed, and him at the center position is a risk because defensively, he was basically free food down there. And then when you have a style of play that was more old school than what most teams would want, he was very quickly regulated to a Montrezl Harrell role off the bench as a high-quality scoring big. But his rookie season was basically serving as the peak of his career, because as injuries would plague his career over his second and third season, he'd be shipped to the Pistons, Wizards, Grizzlies, and now back with the Washington Wizards in a limited backup role. And by limited, I mean he's playing under 20 minutes a game limited. Now, obviously, unlike now where everyone's trying to be as versatile as possible, that wasn't exactly the trend even a decade ago, going through the high school and college ranks. So some people will get left behind despite being one of the best players in their position in college, because they just didn't meet what the NBA was wanting from a player. So either you don't fit in because of your skill set or your lack of a true position. But I think what hurts more than that is putting a ton of resources into something and not seeing the progress you wanted to see at the end of that investment. If there is a word that plagues the NBA draft process, it is the word potential. It's a word that can blind even the more sensible of people just from the image of a player's complete form. But it's also the level of the draft bust that hurts the most. And it's also very rare to see work out in the first place. And that level is the project player. Usually one of the rawest players in the class and young, but with the vitals that'll make any scout go crazy. But the only thing is, most projects are late or even early second round picks. Low risk, high reward. But what I want to talk about is the project players that for some reason go early in the draft and ends up a major bust. So let's start with what is most possibly one of the worst examples of this type of player. The 4th overall pick of the 2020 NBA draft, the Chicago Bulls took Patrick Williams. All I've heard about Patrick Williams come draft time is about how he was potentially the next Kawhi Leonard. What I think people need to understand in 2026 is there's no such thing as an exact copy of an all-time player. It's just whoever they end up being at their best. The closest thing we ever got to a copy of an all-time player is Kobe Bryant to Michael Jordan. There's no next LeBron, there's no next Curry, and there's certainly no next Kawhi Leonard, no matter how many long and tall wings come into the NBA. But the fact that the Bulls fell for him hard speaks volumes. And this is while he was a 6th man at Florida State, and again, very raw. Now, to his slight defense, it took Kawhi a few years to become Kawhi, but Kawhi was also an unfinished product at the same time. But Patrick Williams has been damn near the exact same player ever since he stepped foot in Chicago, Illinois. Even if you take a look at his season-to-season stats, it's legit nearly the same numbers year after year after year. But I think the funniest part of all this is the fact that the Bulls proceeded to pay him $18 million until 2029. So he's going to be eating well from them for a long time. Everyone knew it was a bad pick from the very start, and we wanted him to prove us wrong, but unfortunately, he did not do that in the slightest. But what about other projects from history? Well, let's stay within the realm of Florida State University, this time with the 6th pick of the 2017 draft, Jonathan Isaac. If Patrick Williams got stuck with Kawhi Leonard comparisons, then for Jonathan Isaac, it was all about Kevin Durant. People saw Isaac as he was a few tools away from being an all-star two-way menace in the NBA if he simply improved his offensive game. He already had elite defensive skill and vitals, but his offense had a long way to go. There was some looks there to be able to say that he could be something in the future, but you had to build him up to be that way. Unfortunately, from his career, he would have a very hard time even getting off the ground, missing 2 full seasons due to injuries, and now in 2026, he plays super limited minutes for the Magic as they mainly use him as a utility defender. Even if he did play 20 to 25 minutes off the bench, we'd be talking about him as one of the best defenders in the NBA, no questions asked. But in this current situation that he's with the Magic, unfortunately, he's only playing 10 minutes a game at this current time as they look to start younger people over him, which is not exactly a good look for this. But just like Patrick Williams though, he's going to be making some nice money up until 2029 and eating good. But how about one more final case, the 6th pick of the 2018 class, also drafted by the Orlando Magic, Mo Bamba. Now before I start, I always need to ask, who was more popular at their peak? Mo Bamba the song or Mo Bamba the player? Because coming into the NBA, he was this super raw unicorn type that people were super fascinated in. One of the longest wingspans to ever come through the draft, the ability to shoot the 3, one of the best shot blockers in the NCAA in his freshman year, and obviously still has a lot of work to do to become anything serious in the league. But the Magic have been on an interesting run of drafting for potential. Watch my Orlando Magic rebuild video to get the full details on that, by the way. And this was yet another one of those picks. But awaiting Mo Bamba was going to be his worst nightmare and be what should have been his best motivator. Coach Steve Clifford, who was very vocal about how behind Mo was playing actual team defense rather than relying on his arms to block a shot, and his lack of basketball IQ. Even after 3 years of primarily playing behind Nikola Vucevic, he finally got his shot to show his worth on a contract year, and statistically, he wasn't even that bad. 10 points, 8 boards, and nearly 2 blocks a night in under 30 minutes a game, and of course, working on that 3-point shot. However, the problems were still loud, and the Orlando Magic had enough and sent him to the Lakers and soon being waived in the summer, not even getting a rookie extension. From there, it's been a ride around the NBA and G League as he truly was never able to become what people thought he'd be. So while Mo Bamba is clinking for relevancy, we still hear Mo Bamba the song being played in College Football 26 as the song stands the test of time better than the player. But it's not like projects don't work out. We still usually get cases of people again drafted in the late first round or even in the second round who were worked up little by little. OG Anunoby, Jaden McDaniels, Pascal Siakam, Ivica Zubac, Rudy Gobert, the names are endless, honestly. But when it comes to drafting one super high and burning rather than taking a more surefire pick, you're just asking to be made fun of by everyone. But in the world of drafting, prospects comes in all shapes and sizes, and busts do as well. Sometimes you just never know what you're going to get as the development entirely falls on themselves working towards it, the opportunities they're given within the team, and the patience from the franchise themselves. Sometimes things break down due to one of those reasons, and sometimes it's due to what they do to themselves, or sometimes it's something as unfortunate as an injury derailing everything. But even if you don't know what to expect from a prospect, at least you can say from watching this video that you have an idea of every level of what makes an NBA draft bust, and maybe you can point out a potential one yourself in the future. With that being said, tell me what topic you'd like to see next, your thoughts on this video, and until next time.